Hi folks, this is Dan again. This is the beginning of Module 3, a little bit more in depth with it. Last time we talked about the Cartesian coordinates, the XYZ coordinates, and how you can get yourself oriented in the XYZ coordinates. Make sure you have the right coordinates. When when I was in high school, we called this the symbols for all the geeks or nerds we do with it. So this is the z-axis coming at you, the positive y-axis, and the positive x-axis. So if I held it like this or like this, I just want to make sure you're understanding that coordinate system with it as well. We also did something that's also important was how to change out the texture on putting it on each of the the components with it. Bah, just lost words there. So I want you to be comfortable and kind of play around with it. There's another video that I should have told you and added to it, is to show you how to do the inspector. I'm going to do a separate video on that one. Watch that video. That's kind of like the solution, the easiest way to move components around to it as well. What I just showed you is just putting in the positions in there, but there's an easier way, of course, right? Excuse me. With it. So let me and I'll do that video on the side with it as well. In regards to number 3, everything's still the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to do a lot of the snipping tools with it. Please get started with this. Don't leave. Don't put this in the back burner, and things will snowball on you as well. This is what I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk to you about the ECS system, which is the Entity Component System Architecture. Mainly, it's the entity component system is what I'm looking at. Mainly the entity and components of this course with it. So, and what is the A-frame and what it is with it, and what's all and take with this. When you watch these video series with it, if you want to understand the deeper level of AR or VR development in A-frame with it, you gotta understand how this works with it. So, if you want to be a mechanic, you guys know how the engine works, right? So if you want to fly a plane, you gotta know what parts the airline, what parts the flaps, and all that stuff, with the wheels and all that stuff with it as well. So it's understanding how the engine works is very important with it as well. So this module, basically, I'm going to talk to you more about A-frame, a little bit more in depth, so you understand what's going on with it. In this module, I'm going to go in depth more so we can apply with the web VR application with it as well. Again, there will be some questions to the videos I will ask you to answer and all that stuff. A-frame is just a popular HTML open source development framework that works perfectly for if you want to learn anything beginning into the VR development with it as well. So I'm going to bring in some PowerPoint slides here. Like I said, just for us to have something to look at, and I will post this as well. Okay, so this is just a PowerPoint. We need to go over some definitions with you before we get started with it as well. Like I said, I really intended this to be your notes as you go through this thing. I don't put this many words on there with it. I'm not going to read everything word for word. This is mainly for your information and understand how this works with it. And I have some questions in the handout regarding this as well. So first of all, again, the A-frame with this. And the A-frame, knowing this, as I look through this would be something that's it's like, what is the A-frame? You got to look at it from a point of view, what is the A-frame and how does it fit into the grand scheme of things with it as well. So think of the A-frame as a framework. When you build a house, you got to have the studs coming up with it and these beams coming up. Whether you build a building, it has to have something that's like the skeleton, right? So think of it like that. Let's start by going back to what an A-frame is and where it came from. Okay, the A-frame framework that actually uses the entity component system architecture. So the entity is what I want to talk to you about today, and the component is the other part. The entity is like a container. You're going to hear me repeat a lot of this stuff with it. The component are things that what goes inside of a container. Now, of course, there's the system and the architecture as well, also known as the ECS. ECS stands for Entity Component System. These are the 3 parts that we're going to hone in mainly with it. But for this course, it's mainly the entity and components with it because of time. The ECS is like a box of Legos. I'm going to talk about the box of Legos with it. When you buy a big box of Legos, I'm going to show you this next slide. That's your framework, all right? Excuse me. And the ECS is the little bumps and then the cavities, how these fit in kind of like a lock and key mechanism. It locks and puts it together. So if you understand how Lego works with it, you can use the Lego box to build a castle, you can build a car, you can build different type of infrastructure as well. You can use these cavities and bumps and build Legos endlessly with it as well, right? So my closest, analogy is Legos with it. So again, I repeat this over and over. The ECS architecture is made out of entity, components, and system. Entities, components, and systems. And this course we're going to cover is entity and components with it. That's what. Sorry, hang on. I gotta get a drink of water. Let me also, if you look at the components, the purpose of the components is to be reusable, and that's so important is that there's a lot of reusable modules that we are reusing with it. So think about the recent texture that you put on the box, the cylinder, the sphere, the plane, the sky. All those are actually components that was actually prefab. Basically, it's creating with it as well. So you want to be able to create your own components and put inside of your entity with it as well. So not only we do specifies the types of component, but we also need to specify the property of the component. Keep that in mind. I have a slide that goes with that. I'm going to talk to you about that as well with it. So okay, so what does it look like? What does an A-frame look like? And I'm going to take you to the syntax in a second with it as well. But let me draw you to this next set of slide here. This is a box of Legos, basically with it. This is a box of Legos, and in this box of Legos, there's 1,000-piece bricks in here, right? And you can build a home, a castle, whatever shape and whatever you want to make with it. So think of it like the A-frame is the box of Legos, and the inside it's like a container with it, and this entity inside it are all components in there, and there are these ridges of the round circles and how it fits onto your other piece of Lego. Those are the actual components that entities that you would actually work with it. So what I said in this paragraph is A-frame is a framework that uses entity, component system, and architecture, or ECS for short. ECS is like a box of Legos to set with Legos itself is the framework, and the ECS are little ridges, bumps, and cavities that allows you to put the Legos together. The ECS is the little bumps and cavities that allows you to put, I repeated this again, didn't I, in here. So you can use these cavities and bumps to make endless models of Legos with it. That's exactly how A-frame works with it. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the ECS architecture is made of entities, components. Entities and components is what we're going to focus on right now with it. So for this module, we're just going to keep it very simple. Components are basically a reusable model that defines an entity that looks like and what it can do. Not only we can specify the components, but we can also specify the properties of the components. Okay, so what does an A-frame look like? So let me show you this, for example. I said to you the entity is like a container, right? Inside that container, you have to tell it with what attributes. Remember what attributes are? There are things that you can actually put in your inline of your HTML tag. Remember inline? So if I had like a header tag, and I would also within that header tag, I would also have an attribute equal in quotation are the properties with it. So excuse me, that's my alarm. So the attribute for the I'll use example. H1 tag is an element. It's a tag. Inside that tag for an inline, you would actually have the attribute, The attribute equals the quotation. What's inside the quotation is your color, right? So you can have font color is the attribute equals to the properties red. Let me give you another example. Human. Take me, for example. Everybody has hair. Hair is an attribute, but everybody could have different color hair, right? I could have black, I could have red, I could have blue. Those are your properties. Eyes are also attributes. Nose, etc., etc., etc. And all these that you're looking at here with it, so they are, if you're defining an entity, the entity needs to have, the components need to have the color, animation, is it spinning, is it rotating, is it moving up and down? You know, these are the type of properties that we're dealing with. Shape, is it a sphere, is it a cylinder? So my last analogy that I'm going to move on with this, I didn't think I need to make any more analogy. So we got an analogy of the Legos box with it. For the guys out there, the girls out there as well with it, think of a car engine. You're asked to actually to build a car engine, and of course there's all these pre-made stuff in there, right? There's the alternator, there's the starter, there is the air conditioning unit, there is the radiator. All these things are all created to fit by the manufacturer of the engine to put into your car, right? Well, there might be some guys out there that like to modify the car, right? And they would actually come up with an electronic box, like aftermarket alarm system, for example, right? So they would actually build, anytime there's a sensor, a door opens, or a glass that's broken, the sensor goes off. That's an aftermarket that you put in, right? So that itself is kind of like, think of it, it's like a custom entity that you just created inside of that, a custom component inside of that. So you got this container is the entity, and the component container is the just holding it, and inside of that are the component is the new hardware that you just put in. In that hardware, for example, you would have a starter, you could have things that have connected to your electrical system with it, what size it is, what dimension it is. All those are attributes, and the properties are the dimensions for it as well. Okay, I'm giving out a lot. I mean, I could describe this all day with it, right? It's 12 minutes and 43 seconds into this right now. Let me pause for part one, and if you can answer some of these questions in my for the sections, all right? So let me pause, and before this is the end of part one, or part A of module 3.